You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome, everybody, to the Border War podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. We are presented, as always, by 360 Vodka. I'm Jarrett Sutton. I'm joined, as always, by Jeff Hawkins. And Jeff, it's tournament time, man. It's always a fun time of year. Everybody's, diving into their brackets, who got on seeding, and where's everybody going in this tournament. It's a fun time of the year, and man, nothing like postseason in the
Hey, you're right, man. It's a great time in March. I've gotten a whole bunch of texts, with fill out my bracket, join my bracket. And some of it's from people I know, and some it's from people I don't even know. So it is that time of the year. It's basketball everywhere. I think one of the cool things is the conference tournaments, that craziness leading up into the March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So it's a time that everybody loves. They love filling out those brackets. They love seeing if they can get a perfect bracket. I've never even gotten close to that, but it's a great time of the year. The fans are very involved, and obviously the coaches and the players are locked in because they want to bring home that national championship. So it's a good time, great time to be a basketball fan.
Yep, it's my fiance who is not a big sports fan. She gets a bracket out last night, and she's asking me about mascots, and we're doing this comparison about the brackets, but it's just hilarious.
I love it.
I know there'll be a lot of brackets around the offices around KC with all three local schools. In the tournament, and Creighton on top of it, and Iowa and Iowa State. So it's a great time for basketball here in Kansas City as well. Let's all right, we got to talk about it. I know you've probably been asked about it a lot. I know I have a lot as well. Kansas is a 1 seed. It's a great thing. They unfortunately they don't get the Midwest, and Houston, number 1 seed. I was watching the selection show, as everybody was, when the selection committee chair gave his comments around why Houston got the edge over Kansas. I don't know if it was the best response, but Kansas still won, and their side of the bracket a little bit tougher than I would say that they would want, but they're in Des Moines, and as Norm Roberts said, which I thought was a great answer that Coach Roberts gave, and I think it speaks to how Kansas, the coaching staff, and the players operate. They're not even worried about Kansas City or where they're going after this first weekend. They're focused on Howard, most importantly, one game at a time. This is the NCAA tournament. They're blocking out all that noise. What was kind of your overall takeaways of the draw the Jayhawks got? Still a 1 seed, not the Midwest. And where their tournament kind of seeding line and where their side of the bracket lies for them.
Yeah, I was just a little confused with it.
Yep.
Just the fact that just their strength of schedule and just some things they've done this whole season. I just couldn't quite understand. And you talked about the explanation as well too. I was a little confused on that as well too, but at the end of the day, I've been on some teams where, we were like, man, we hope we're going to get a 2 seed or a 3 seed, or we should be deserving of this, and we didn't get it. And, you can go down the list of a lot of teams that probably didn't get the seeding that they were hoping that they would get. And you said it best. Norm, said it best. They're not worried about that. Even messed my head up because I'm over here thinking about it. But again, I'm not directly on the inside of that program. And for those guys, I know it doesn't matter what seed they get, what region they're in. It's who are we playing next, and what do we got to do to make sure that we're ready for this game. So it's just kind of luck of the straw. Sometimes you get what you want as a 1 seed, sometimes you don't. But again, you are a 1 seed, and at the end of the day, if you want to win, you got to be prepared to beat whoever stands in front of you. And no matter who's playing this tournament, you got to win 6 games. So you just got to look at it 1 game at a time, but knowing that there's 6 games you got to win, and it doesn't matter who's stacked up in front of you. You just got to stay lasered in and focused. So I think they'll be fine with the bracket. The region doesn't matter. I know we talked about the region and kind of where they were at. It might even be a blessing that they're not in the Midwest, so they won't have as many distractions close by. Some of the players, coaches as well. So I think being in the West makes guys want to commit. I know I'd be around the atmosphere if it was in the Midwest. Now it's in the West. I'm like, oh, I'll catch it from TV. So that's gonna at least bring down some distractions from the players, coaches, and just everybody on the inside of that program.
One thing I was confused with is Marcus Sasser's injury. The committee put such a weight into Marcus Sasser being
emphasis on that.
Yeah, they sure did. And look, I not to take anything away from the season Houston's had. They had a great year, and not taking anything away from the American in that league. But I just think with Kansas winning the Big 12 outright, that not a share outright, and that didn't carry as much weight as I thought it would, and I think too much was made. And I know I have a problem with the net in general in terms of the net rating and like margin of victory and margin of defeat. I think it's weighted too much. I think the committee looked at the 2 Texas losses, not just the Big 12 championship, but just Kansas losing, by double digits against Texas twice. I felt like that carried a lot of weight, and I don't know if that necessarily was warranted. I mean, yes, that they're in the Big 12 championship game, and but they won the Big 12 outright, and they still gave Kansas a 1. But the fact that Houston jumped them, I don't know. I thought that was a little bit interesting, and just not weighting the conferences either. And like you said, strength of schedule. And my whole point would be, why are we having quad 1, quad 2, quad 3?
Yeah, come on, yeah.
Kansas wins games, and then we talk about quad 2. There was a lot of confusion there for me. I didn't really get that, but
it's like they already had the decision made before the tournament.
Exactly,
already done.
And if you're if you're gonna have just certain talking points, those talking points better hit on a little bit more than Marcus Sasser was hurt.
Yeah.
Kevin McCullough was hurt too, and Bill Self wasn't coaching in the big. They're just things that don't make sense to me.
Now that they want to factor stuff in, that's when you're like, well, factor everything in there. Like,
exactly.
Don't leave out key ingredients.
A little recency bias, a little bit of like, aren't we supposed to look at the whole body of work?
Yeah.
Like just conference servant. Anyway. But look, Kansas is the chance. They won it last year. They're looking to repeat. Jalen Wilson has been great all year. He continues to be great. He plays a Big 12 Player of the Year and critical to the tournament run for Kansas, as is DeJuan, who's a national champion. These guys are battle tested. What kind of do you draw off of? And we talked about this in our previous pod of, like you said, I don't really get into the seeding. I don't really get into like where you're playing either. It all comes down to game plan, locking in, being focused, not playing flat, bringing an energy right out of the gates, taking care of teams, like putting your foot on the gas and really playing your brand of basketball. And defense travels, and Kansas is so good defensively. It's a big part of why they were where they were last year, winning games when maybe they didn't shoot it all that well or didn't score it all that well. Bill Self's going to have his team ready to play, and Bill Self is always great in game with adjustments, making changes. And I think the experience of this team really matters, that they've been here and they already won it. So they know what they want to get back to, and that's the Final Four in Houston. Where do you see this team right now, Jeff, going into this tournament, the experience they have, the year they had, and just where you see them on their side of the bracket too, of where their run could be and how prepared they are?
Yeah, when I think about this year's Jayhawk team, it kind of still makes me think about this team as I did throughout the season. I think this is a very dangerous team that when they get clicking, when they got guys going, Jalen Wilson, Player of the Year, DeJuan, Defense Player of the Year. So you got the Player of the Year and the Defensive Player of the Year, and they both are coming back off of a championship season last year. So you mentioned it, to be able to have that experience. I just think when you have that experience, and it's not so much experience from like, man, we got all these seniors, but it's experience from, we got guys that are back from our championship run, and not just guys that, didn't have a role. We have guys back that had a role. So when you factor in that experience with, the coaching, the player lock in. I like that. I like the odds of the Jayhawks making a deep run. And, when it comes to their side of the bracket, and I really don't think, obviously every team, you're going to look at your path. You're going to see, all right, if we go here, they get here, we might go here. I mean, you're going to look at that path, but I think still at the end of the day, it's the little things. It's paying attention to, I think one of the things that's going to really help them out is really paying attention to detail. Because I think Coach Self, you talk about his ATOs, out of timeouts, making in-game adjustments. When you have to make in-game adjustments and come out of a timeout with some type of a play that you want executed, guys have to be locked in. They have to be very detail-oriented. So I think this Jayhawk team has been locked in throughout the season. They're going to be happy to get Coach Self back. McCullough, they're going to be happy to get him back. They're going to have a lot of practices that they're going to be able to have before they play this first game. So they kind of went on a little roller coaster ride, obviously with Coach Self's health. And, Norm did a great job of, keeping a Band-Aid over and stopping the bleeding. So, they didn't have a chance of bleeding out. So I really expect this team to really kind of surround and kind of fight behind Coach Self, kind of like they did last year, especially with his health and, really getting him back into the swing of things and them just getting used to him being back. But I really think this is a team that can really do some damage, and it goes from, and it kind of streams from their experience from DeJuan and Jalen. I think those two guys really have to step up and be big-time leaders. You have some younger guys, Grady Dick. And I say younger guys, Kevin McCullough, I call him a younger guy. But again, when you talk about on this team, he's more of a younger guy, but he has experience like a senior just mentally. So I think these guys are going to be locked in. KJ Adams, a lot of these guys are going to have good opportunities to really show what they can do and see how Coach Self gets them ready. It's always fun to see what he does to get these guys ready and what adjustments he'll be making throughout the game.
No question. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Border War podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. We are presented by 360 Vodka. And Jeff, you touched on a big piece of what I wanted to break down, and that is, we talked about this on previous pods. Kevin McCullough was playing really good ball at the end of the year, and I know he got banged up. And I think it's important to be full strength and at full health. And we've seen this in the past, too, with Kansas teams. I think Coach Self is comfortable sitting guys out of the conference. And I think it's right. I think it's the right decision and get guys healthy and ready for the big run. And that's the big goal. And that is competing for a national championship. And Kansas won 12 outright. So I think it was the right decision. And obviously, I can't say enough about, Coach Self. And, that was a big scare for everybody. And speaking to him and praying for him. And it sounds like, he's in good spirits and kind of turned the corner and was on top of what took place. And that's the most important thing. I love watching Coach Self coach. Obviously, as you know, he gets into every possession he's coaching and totally engaged, and he can get beat red and his emotions. You just want him to take care of himself. I thought it was very interesting. Bob Huggins' post-game press conference, he got very serious. Knowing Coach Huggins and Coach Self are very close, and said, he needs to take care of himself. I thought that was pretty genuine. So that's most important is Coach Self being, completely healthy and ready to go for the tournament, which I think he will be. He'll be smart. But let's break into the matchup, Jeff, and we'll start with Howard, and then I do want to get into what could be there that second round game. Elijah Hawkins is the best player for Howard. I think
no relation. I don't think.
No. We'll dive into Howard in here. See if there's any background there, but he's a smaller guard, 5'11", but can really score it.
Same size. I'm just playing.
Like point guard, can really shoot it. I mean, you want to get players. You see the scouting report. Just look back on Jeff's old day.
Oh my gosh!
Howard's got three guys that can score it pretty well, but I think Elijah Hawkins is kind of the guy you circled. Dockery is a really good shooter. I always look at these 1/16 matchups as the 16 seed. They probably got to shoot the lights out. That's kind of how have any chance. But yeah, I like Kansas, and just, that they've been in these games before. They're not going to overlook Howard at all. They'll be focused, and look, if Kansas does what they're supposed to do, that's Jalen, that's Grady, that's DeJuan, that's Kevin, that's KJ, that's the bench. That they're going to be fine in this game. Anything you draw from Howard in this opening round matchup?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it best. I think a lot of their offense runs through Elijah. He's their guy. But I think, when I see this team, this is a team that obviously we don't want to look at that 1-16 matchup. Every 16 seed is, trying to, be that team to knock off that one. But I think this is a team that, KU, they're going to have, when it comes to their length and athleticism and their ability to pressure. And again, you have Coach Self ATLs. I just think, just Coach Self's mind, not ATLs, just his mind, his mind. To me, I think this is going to be a game again that they will take seriously. And no, if this team gets hot, you give up any open looks, you take these guys for granted. You give them any bit of confidence. I mean, that's what happens in the NCAA tournament. You give up a couple possessions, and now this team has confidence for the whole game. So this is a team that you definitely want to, like you've mentioned, you don't want to come out and start out flat, especially being the first round. You definitely want to come out and have that mojo working, that energy thriving. And I think this is a team that the Jayhawks can really pressure into turnovers. Elijah has done really great, but he's still new. He's just a sophomore. So I think they can really take advantage of, his experience as far as in getting into the tournament. So I think those are some things that they can definitely do on the defensive end. But I think it's going to be a defensive game to where they're going to have to pressure the ball to where they're going to be allowed to get out and get into their transition game. And when KU can get in their transition game, things just flow a lot better and the energy thrives.
Attack mode, right? Don't play passive, be aggressive, build a lead, and keep the foot on the gas. Put out the way. That's kind of the name of the game. I did, obviously I'm a guy that doesn't want to look ahead, but we got to. We expect Kansas to get by Howard. I think the Arkansas-Illinois game is really fascinating. Just from my perspective, this game I'm going to be watching, and there's a lot of talent in this game. Nick Smith is back for Arkansas. It's helped them a lot. They are still very young, but they got NBA talent on that floor. There's, Trevon Brazile has been out all year.
Yeah.
Gordon Walsh is another name to keep in mind, but I wouldn't overlook Illinois either. They're very, very up and down and inconsistent. Terrence Shannon, that name will remind Kansas fans of, his Texas Tech days, and that would be a fun Kevin Hall versus Terrence Shannon match. To be honest, I would like that. But Coleman Hawkins is another 6'10" size, IQ, passing, and then Matthew Meyer, another transfer, Baylor. Kansas will know him real well. So I think that this is the 8-9 game. I would say those two teams are pretty dangerous. If it's Kansas, Illinois, I love the Bill Self storyline there.
Yeah.
I think Arkansas and Kansas would be the matchup that I think that's a tough one because, man, I mean, when they're right and Nick Smith is playing well and Anthony Black, who is a really dynamic point guard, but, Arkansas has really struggled at times to shoot it. And that to me bodes well for Kansas. And I still lean on the experience factor, older players, Kansas' defense. Kansas should be able to get out of the first weekend, but do you any team you want to see out of those two? Is it Arkansas? Is it Illinois? I've seen a lot of Kansas fans say they'd rather see Illinois than Arkansas, knowing Nick Smith's back. I think it's either one would be Illinois is just physically tough.
Yeah.
And obviously Coach Underwood knows Kansas really well as well, and is a very good coach in his own right. I think either of these teams, it's an interesting second round matchup for Kansas.
Yeah, and those we talked about it, and this is something that when we talked about Missouri was trying to avoid that 8-9 matchup. I mean, that being that 8-9 seed, it's like to me, wow. I think it's to me they're kind of fairly they're almost fairly the same when. About who do you?
Honestly, game.
who do you want to play? I mean, you can start thinking about the Illinois matchup with Kansas. Mentally, does that, make coaches want to, coach a little bit harder? Oh, I got to get this win. This is the school I was at. Does Illinois make a big scene out of it? I mean, there's so much stuff that can happen from a mental standpoint. So I like the Arkansas game just because it just like when we talk about blocking out those distractions, this is an added way to block out those distractions. But again, I'm going to tell you, this is me talking from a fan standpoint now. As a player, it don't matter. I mean, I know that coaching staff, they're scouting both teams. They're ready for both teams, whoever wins. Obviously, they're making sure they're scouting the most important team right now, which is Howard. But again, coaches do make sure that, they want to make sure that they're ready just in case, they do advance. So I think when it comes to Arkansas, Illinois, you can kind of flip a coin. But again, I think either one of those teams it's going to be a good matchup for KU as far as them being able to pressure, them be able to get out in transition, and just some of the things that Coach Self does. Again, I always talk about his mind, just all of his counters. I mean, I think either one of those teams, Coach Self's going to, have fun with, coaching and preparing with, and, he's going to have his guys ready.
Yeah, I look at, too, that Arkansas, but to your point, it's well said, like, doesn't matter who Kansas is playing or what matchup could be there down the road. They're going to focus on themselves, getting themselves right, and executing both ends of the floor. So, really, it's more for the fans to kind of get into the matchup.
Yeah.
I will say, Arkansas, Illinois, they do have big play. They have forwards.
Yeah.
That play, the Mitchell factor with Arkansas, he's a big. But I actually think Illinois and Deng Danja, he's the more skilled big. So that's why I think Arkansas is the better matchup for Kansas at Illinois, just because of the bigs. And Coleman Hawkins is more of a stretch big that is a really good passer, and I think pick and roll would, that to me. And Texas kind of exploited that a little bit into guys in the you look down the road too. UConn in this bracket, Gonzaga in this bracket, UCLA in this bracket. So it's a tough field for Kansas. They're still the number one seed in this region for a reason. So it's like I love when every team looks at, well, I'm afraid of this team and that team, and it's like, but that doesn't matter. It's where your team's at right now, and knowing they're every other team's looking at Kansas is, how do we not play Kansas? Yeah, that's how it always goes. It's always a good way to look at it. That I think sometimes can get lost in this. And by the way, coaching matters in this tournament.
Yeah.
This tournament.
Sheesh, yes, it does.
It's the biggest thing that never gets talked about. I do think Eric Musselman's had a lot of success in this tournament too. He's done a pretty good job in this tournament. So I always look at the coaching dynamics too in every match. That I think is always a fascinating storyline. Underwood himself would be a good one.
Yeah, it would. That would be a good one.
Would be a good one as well. So we'll hopefully be talking about 2 wins for Kansas and a appearance next week. Jeff, good luck to you as well as you're making a state run here with the Raiders at Pembroke. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will.
So appreciate your time as always, man. We'll chat next week.
You bet, man. See you guys.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.